Ben Hall, Fox News.
Thank you. Thank you very much both for this today. Foreign Minister, there is a suggestion that what we've seen so far is a minor invasion, that there's more to come, and so it only warrants sort of lesser US sanctions. I wonder if that is your read as well. And also, you and President Zelensky called for tough sanctions to be placed on Russia before the invasion. You said this would happen. If not, it has happened. Are you happy with that in mind, with the way the US has handled this? What more would you like to see from the US and from the international community to try and deter more aggression? And Secretary Blinken, thank you. Given that Russia has invaded Ukraine, regardless of all the threats of harsh sanctions, the attempts at diplomacy, what makes you think that continuing down the same path is going to deter them any further? Do you think it's time to change tact? Do you think diplomacy has failed? And secondly, have you underestimated Putin?
First, there is no such thing as minor, middle, or major invasion. Invasion is an invasion. Second, as I said earlier, we do appreciate the sanctions which were announced today. They target Russia. They're very specific. They are painful. I can say frankly that yesterday, when we learned about the first executive order to impose sanctions related to economic activities in the Donetsk, with Donetsk and Lugansk, we were puzzled because we saw how the side that thought recognition from Russia is being punished, but we didn't see how Russia, who granted its recognition, is punished. But we saw it today. And this strategy of imposing sanctions by waves, if I may put it this way, is something that can work if it continues in a sustainable way. President Putin should not have a single minute when he starts to think that this is the threshold, this is the ceiling, the pressure reached its ceiling, and he will not be punished anymore. This pressure should continue to be stepped up, and if that involves regular issuance of executive orders on new sanctions, we will be more than happy to see that. I will repeat again. We can, despite the horrific address by President Putin, where he basically challenged or rejected, he didn't challenge it, he rejected the very existence of the Ukrainian state, we can still stop him if we act in a very resolved way and keep mounting pressure on him. The question is that he has a certain table on his mind, which I'm not aware of, but I'm sure he has it. And we should also understand that every next decision should be taken in a swift action. And we saw 2 executive orders issued by President Biden within, less than 24 hours. This may be the dynamics that will have to be upheld if Russia continues to escalate. And it was encouraging to hear from Secretary a very simple sentence: if Russia escalates, the United States and partners will escalate sanctions. This is exactly the rule that has to be followed. And yes, we did believe that it would be helpful for some of sanctions, not all of sanctions, but some of sanctions to be imposed before the invasion begins as a preemptive measure for what Russia had done before. But this question becomes obsolete now, and we have to focus on a different strategy, the one that I just described.
Ben, it's hard for me to improve much on my friend Dmytro's answer. I'll just add a couple of things. First, all along we said that we were pursuing 2 tracks. The track of diplomacy and dialogue to try to persuade Russia not to engage in renewed aggression against Ukraine, and at the same time, a track where we were building up deterrence, building up defense, and building a response that would have massive consequences for Russia. Russia has clearly chosen to reject diplomacy and dialogue and instead to pursue aggression. As a consequence, we have started to pursue the severe consequences that we've made clear would follow from any renewed Russian aggression. Today, faced with the beginning of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, we started high and will stay high. The sanctions that we've already announced go well beyond what we did in 2014. Full blocking sanctions against two of Russia's largest financial institutions, VEB and the military bank. These institutions hold more than $80 billion in assets. They provide key services that are critical to financing the Kremlin and Russian military. We have comprehensive sanctions against Russian sovereign debt. What that means is that we're cutting off the Russian government from Western financing. Sanctions on elites and family members, and as promised, as we've said all along, Germany taking action on Nord Stream 2. And to repeat what Dmytro just emphasized, we've also made clear, we're making clear today, that if Russia continues to escalate, so will we. And of course, it's not only the sanctions and other measures of that nature that are being taken. It is, as we've made clear, the reinforcement of NATO on its eastern flank, and continuing to provide and indeed increase the support that we're providing to Ukraine against every dimension, security, diplomatic, political, economic, humanitarian. All of that is in the mix. Ultimately, President Putin makes whatever decisions he makes. We can do everything in our power to try to shape those decisions, but as I've said all along, whatever his decisions, we're prepared either way, and we've demonstrated that again today in full coordination with allies and partners.
Have you underestimated him?
Oh, I think to the contrary. We've not underestimated him. We've actually laid out for the world his entire playbook, a playbook that he is now following, and is making very clear that, for example, what the President's laid out, what I laid out at the United Nations a week ago, is exactly what's happening. So we've had a very clear-eyed view of President Putin all along.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.